glad you could join me. So this is the second recording of this video because I somehow managed to unplug my mic and the whole last video I recorded didn't have audio to it. So we're going to try it again. This book is called Discovering the Wonders of our world. A guide to nature's scenic marvels. And on the front here we have a beautiful photo of enormous waterfalls. This is quite a large, thick, textbook-like book. And on the back it says, a continent-by-continent tour of 138 of the most magnificent spots on the planet. More than 400 breathtaking color photographs, 140 maps, and 107 illustrations and diagrams. Facts and background information about these wonders, including reports of explorers, geologists, and geographers. Special coverage of indigenous plants, animals, and people, and how natural forces shape the world. Let's take a look inside. This book was printed and designed by the Reader's Digest Association in 1993. So another book from last century. And there are just tons and tons of contributors, writers, consultants, artists, photographers. This book. The contents we have: the world's greatest natural wonders, forces that shape the earth, and features. I just picked out a few things that I thought would be interesting, and we're going to start with the section on Africa. Ulad said, oasis. Trees flourish and water flows in a pocket of fruitfulness within the Sahara's barren wastes. And here is a map. It looks like this is located in Algeria. And here is the oasis. Looks like it's north of Adrar and kind of east of Bene Abbes. Water is the lifeblood of the desert, and the hundreds of oases scattered across the Sahara stand like fertile islands in a desolate sea. The popular image of an oasis is a romantic picture, waving palms beside a crystal clear pool where nomads replenish their water supplies before moving on. It is an idyllic but not entirely true vision, for some oases, such as Ulad said in Algeria, have long had permanent farming communities. With its groves of palm trees and plots of vegetables, Ulatz is a remarkably attractive place, where the women's robes add splashes of color to streets lined with red, mud-built houses. It stands in stark contrast to its surroundings. The Great Erg Occidental. There, great dunes rise like the waves of a rolling sea of sand, and the relentless sun raises the summer daytime temperature to 49 degrees Celsius or 120 degrees Fahrenheit or more. A traveler stranded without shade or water would die of heat stroke and dehydration within 48 hours. The people who have settled in Ulatz are mostly market gardeners. They cultivate plots of irrigated land, growing vegetables, grapes, figs, peaches, and oranges, as well as the desert's most treasured crop, the date palm. Within the palm groves, pillars still mark the site of the ancient slave market, whose hapless merchandise once toiled to create the irrigation canals. Create the irrigation channels, or fagaras, that bring about all this fertility. The fagaras tap water held underground in a vast sandy sponge, up to 6,000 feet, or 1,800 meters thick in places. See below. We'll look at it. The date palm, it is said, likes to stand with its head in fire and its feet in water. Like the camel, it is essential to life in the desert, and because of its importance, it is treated with reverence and almost as a near relative. It is also the subject of myths and legends. One legend about the date palm says that Allah made the tree from the clay left over after he had created Adam. Another claims that after Adam had been driven out of paradise, God commanded him to cut his hair and nails and bury them, whereupon a tree grew bearing a juicy fruit. Tree of Life. It is said, too, that the date palms develop close relationships with each other. If one tree dies, its nearby friend mourns and produces no more fruit. A female tree will die if its lover is felled. I recently read a book, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of the author, but she grew up and started working for a forest service in the U.S., and started finding the fungus and other symbiotic relationships between different plants made a difference in how things would grow and where they would grow, and that trees actually do communicate with each other underneath the ground, often sending different chemicals to trees that are injured or infested with insects. And if you're a nerd like I am, it was quite interesting. The fruit of this precious tree is a staple food, and as well as being eaten fresh, dates can be dried and ground into flour. No part of the tree is wasted. Its trunk is used for timber and fuel. The rough fibrous bark is woven into rope, and the stalks are used for fences and roofs, and the leaves are woven to make baskets, brooms, bags, and sandals. The juice of some varieties make a sugary syrup, and the juice of a young palm can be fermented to make a palatable though highly intoxicating wine. Now you're talking. Even date stones are put to use. They're roasted and ground to make date coffee, an alternative to the hot tea enjoyed on cold desert evenings. So here we have the flow of the desert's lifeblood. For centuries, desert people have tapped underground water supplies by digging tunnels known as fogaras that channel the water down to oases. The tunnels may extend for as far as 10 miles or 16 kilometers and can lie as deep as 100 feet or 30 meters below ground level. They were dug by huge gangs of men, many of them slaves, using simple tools. Upkeep is a problem. Channels get blocked or have to be extended to tap more water. The water emerges from the Foghara near the irrigated land, minimizing water loss by evaporation. A rake across the stream directs water to the individual plots. Fair shares. Each plot of land receives water tapped from the rock by Fogharas. So here you have the underground water. You have the Foghara, the irrigation stream, the stone rake that divides the water to go to different plots so that they each get a fair share. And then here we have a photo of the oasis edge next to the desert during the day. And then here we have a large photo with 3 people sitting around a campfire on the side of a sand dune with trees mostly off to the right, so I'm assuming the oasis is this direction. Let's take a look at this. Ngorongoro crater. Isolated from the plains below, the vast volcanic crater is a high-rise wildlife haven, abundant in all kinds of animals. It appears that we're in Tanzania, and this one just kind of south of the Kenya border. And you have many craters in this area. There's a lake, Magadi, near this crater. And it says Arusha is to the east. Cloaked in a tangle of ragged vegetation, the steep flanks of this ancient extinct volcano in northern Tanzania give little indication of what lies within its crater's walls. The silence of the thin air some 6,000 feet or 1,800 meters above sea level is broken only by the rustling of leaves as warm breezes rise in the updraft from the surrounding plain and chase over the rim into the watery blue African sky. At the crest of the crater's rim, there is a breathtaking change of scene. The land plunges into a hazy void, soaping down to form a huge, pastel-shaded dish. At first, it's hard to adjust to the giddying immensity of the space. The only points of focus are the filigree lines of the watercourses some 2,000 feet or 600 meters below, winding to glittering, pink-smudged pools. Dark flecks pepper the crater floor. Only when these begin to drift cloud-like into ever-changing formations does it become clear what they actually are. Thousands of grazing wildebeests and zebras. Suddenly, a wave of movement stirs the pools as the pink smudges take to the air, wheel, and then resettle on the water. They are immense flocks of flamingos, which congregate in the shallow crater lake. One of the highest concentrations of wildlife in Africa, an estimated 30,000 animals, is to be seen on the crater's 100 square mile or 260 square kilometer floor. Naming Ngorongoro's animals sounds like reading a checklist for photographers on safari. There are some 50 different species of large mammals, including lions, elephants, rhinoceros, hippopotamuses, giraffes, various antelopes such as elands and impala, vervet, monkeys, monkeys, baboons, warthogs, and hyenas. There are also more than 200 species of birds, including ostriches, ducks, and guinea fowl. Effectively, the crater is a small-scale version of the wildlife of East Africa, raised to the heavens as if in the palm of some smiling god's hand. Crater Island. This natural Noah's Ark is a happy accident of geology. Ngorongoro lies on the eastern spur of the Great Rift Valley, a fault in the Earth's crust curving through Africa from Mozambique to Syria. At various times over millions of years, enormous pressures at the Earth's core have exploited the weaknesses in the fault, and molten rock have been forced to the surface in the series of volcanoes, now forming East Africa's Crater Island. Ngorongoro is one of these volcanoes. Once it was cone-shaped and about twice its present height, but when the power of its last eruption was eventually spent some 2.5 million years ago, and all the molten rock beneath its cone had been spewed out as lava, the top of the cone sank into the cavity. All that remains of it today is Round Table Hill in the crater's northwest sector. Technically, a volcanic crater that is produced by a volcanic explosion or collapse is known as a caldera. Ngorongoro is the world's 6th largest caldera, about 11 miles or 18 kilometers across and roughly circular. But it is the largest caldera with an unbroken rim. The crater's African name, however, takes little note of such statistical niceties. Ngorongoro simply means big hole. Now, don't any of you dare go call anything on any of your friends or spouses or significant others Ngorongoro, because if they find out, you're going to be in big trouble. A rough and bumpy road built in 1959 leads down to the crater floor, dropping 2,000 feet or 600 meters in just 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers. Only vehicles with 4-wheel drive are allowed in the crater. They bring about 10,000 visitors a year in a steady trickle. Okay, so that would have been information from 1993. So I wonder what it is today. Unlike the animals of the Serengeti Plain to the west, which migrate annually in search of water and fresh pastures, most of the Ngorongoro animals stay in the crater throughout the year. There is water available even in the dry season. Here is a quite scenic picture. It says dark clouds roll across Ngorongoro crater as sunrise brings a silvery sheen to the lake and swamps. Water available in the dry season sustains large numbers of animals. So you have all this water. You can see the edges of the crater there. Grazing herds. In the vast arena of the crater floor, the striped zebras show up starkly among their wildebeest companions. But when they are on the move or grazing in the blur of a heat haze, their outlines merge with their surroundings. Look how many there are. 2 springs and 2 rivers, the Munj and Lonyoki, feed a series of swamps and the main lake, a shallow soda lake known as Magadi. With no outlet, the lake water has a high salt content resulting from centuries of evaporation, and this gives it an intense blue color in some lights. Only algae and some crustaceans, such as shrimps, can survive in the water, but this suits the millions of flamingos that feed there. There are 2 species, the greater flamingos stalk the lake margins with long-legged grace, heads bent as they dredge crustaceans through their bills, and the lesser flamingos filter for algae in deeper water. Neighboring swamps provide muddy pits where hippos wallow, as well as watering holes for elephants and black rhino, with their attendant tick birds or oxpeckers. These birds feed on parasites scratched from the leathery hides. Rain and renewal. Every year following the long rains from December to April or May, the crater's grasslands are emerald green and awash with pink, yellow, blue, and white flowers flourishing in the rich volcanic soil. They include petunias, lupins, daisies, and rare blue clover. As the May-November dry season progresses, the crater gradually changes color, from green to yellow, then fawn and biscuit brown, and the animals gather near the Munch Swamp. As grass covers about 2/3 of the crater, nothing breaks the smooth uniformity of the colors, save for scattered clumps of acacia trees and outcrops of rock, virtually walled off from the outside world by the crater rim. The Ngorongoro animals need look no further for all they need to survive. Grazers such as zebras, wildebeests, and gazelles make the most of the grasslands and are preyed upon by carnivores such as lions, leopards, cheetahs, hyenas, and jackals. They prowl around the grazing herds like nonchalant highwaymen waiting to pick off a straggler. The grazers mostly give birth in January and February when the grass is greenest, and their predators do the same while there are plenty of newborn calves and foals to provide food for nursing mothers and weaned youngsters. So all is not paradise in this Garden of Eden. The agitation that runs through the wildebeest herd at the sight of a prowling lioness, the darting leap of a startled Thompson's gazelle, the whirring of flamingo wings as they launch themselves from the path of an opportunistic hyena, all speak of the constant alertness essential for survival in this tightly programmed community, and the soaring vultures spiraling over some distant kill mark another conclusion in this daily ritual of death. Living laboratory. Ngorongoro's self-containment is a boon to the international scientific community, and for many years zoologists and others have come to study the wildlife here and its uniquely poised ecosystem. But there is a cloud on the horizon. The cause for concern is inbreeding. Scientific analysis of the lion population, for example, has revealed that all the 100 or so lions in the crater are descended from just 15 individuals. That doesn't bode well. These either survived the devastating wet season plague of biting flies in 1962 or strayed into the crater shortly after. This means that the genetic pool of Ngorongoro's lions is worryingly low, threatening both their ability to resist disease and the fertility of future generations. A few animals leave the crater each year along the ancient tracks leading over the rim. They join the dry season migrations on plains below the crater and later return. These migrating animals are only a small percentage of the total, but they do expose Ngorongoro's wildlife to the genetic pool of the world beyond. But agricultural development in the surrounding region threatens to encroach on these migratory routes and to isolate the crater more than ever. Once Ngorongoro was part of the nearby Serengeti National Park, where farming is not permitted. This put the Maasai people of the region, who herd cattle, at a disadvantage. So in 1959, the crater and the area around it was made a conservation area, covering some 3,200 square miles, or 8,300 square kilometers. But cattle numbers within the crater are strictly limited, and no building is permitted. The graceful, dignified Maasai with their reddened hair and rust-colored robes knotted at the shoulder are part of the magic of Ngorongoro. The soft footfall of a Maasai herder warrior, the rustle of sun-bleached grasses, the acrid scent of animal life, all contribute to the air of timelessness that hangs over this age-old landscape. I wonder how much has changed since then, some 30 years on. Here's a photo of an elephant feeding on the trees, and it says, "Elephants stripping off leaves and bark can kill stands of trees." And here's another photo, this of the wildebeests. Most of the crater's 1,500 wildebeests or canoes stay all year and keep loosely together as a herd. Stragglers fall prey to predators. Tree of Life. Homemaker, a male masked weaver bird, weaves a grass nest using an acacia thorn as a hook. He must attract a female before the grass browns, or she will reject it. Then he must start again. Oh my goodness. The stakes are high. Here's an illustration of a nest and the bird, yellow with black on its wings and tail and face, red eyes and black beak. Acacia trees and bushes of several types dominate the East African grasslands. Although they have sharp and painful thorns, many animals feed on them. Small antelopes such as dik-diks and Thompson gazelles eat shoots. Larger ones such as impalas browse on bushes, and elephants and giraffes strip full-size trees. As well as food, acacias provide lookout posts, larders, sunshades, umbrellas, scratching posts, and homes. Leopards sit high in the branches to spot their prey, and after a kill lodge the carcass in a fork between branches, out of the reach of marauding hyenas. Lions rest beneath the leaf canopy in the heat of the day, and tiger snakes search among the branches for weaver bird nests and a feast of chicks. The silk cocoons of bagworm moths hang from branches. During mating, the female moth is inside the cocoon, but the male stays outside, where he risks attack from ants living in tiny galls at the base of thorns. The ants guard the tree against leaf-eating insects, but not from invaders such as vervet monkeys, which pluck the curly seed pods and eat the seeds. Mature seeds eaten by animals such as impalas and elephants are softened by the animal's digestive juices. Without this, they would not germinate. Dung beetles bury the seeds when they scavenge droppings. In this way, a new acacia comes to life. Let's flip ahead. See what else we can find. Giant's Causeway. When nature became a mathematician, Ireland's coast produced the uncanny sight of a cemetery in stone. Here we have Northern Ireland, and you have the Giant's Causeway. You have nearby Benbane Head, and then to the south you have Port Ballandray and Dunluce Castle. Nature's symmetry is something we take for granted in flowers, insects, and in the face of a tiger, for example. In geology, however, it is rarer, and its occurrence is something to marvel at. In the Giant's Causeway, nature has spectacularly revealed her mathematical genius, producing tens of thousands of multi-sided columns of rock packed together like a giant-sized handful of hexagonal pencils. From a distance, this looks like just another part of County Antrim's enchanting coast, but suddenly the eye is caught by a strangely checkered promontory. It leads out from the base of the cliffs and descends gently into the sea like a huge crudely fashioned slipway. For a moment it causes the mind to reel. It looks for all the world like the kind of landscape that is produced by computer graphics for a video game. Yet this extraordinary geological freak has an ancestry dating back some 60 million years. Well, I think that's a little harsh. Geological freak. Come on. The continents of North America and Europe, which had been joined together, began to split apart. The Atlantic Ocean opened up between them and gradually spread out from the central volcanic rift on the ocean floor. Iceland, with its numerous active volcanoes, stands on the rift today. Lava areas in Ireland and Scotland were produced on the rift as the continents began their slow journey. 40,000 basalt columns. As the lava poured forth in County Antrim, it formed the largest lava plateau in Europe. The basalt content of some of the lava was unusually consistent. As it solidified, it contracted, but the forces of contraction were so evenly distributed that it cracked with geometric precision. The same process can be seen when the thick layer of mud in the bottom of a puddle dries in the sun. On the Giant's Causeway, the basalt columns average 18 inches or 460 millimeters across and vary from about 3 feet to 6 feet or 1 meter to 2 meters high. The causeway is about 200 yards or 180 meters across at its widest, extends 170 yards or 150 meters into the sea and consists of some 40,000 columns. Over the millennia, erosion by glaciers in the Ice Age and relentless battering by the Atlantic have shaped the Giant's Causeway into the form we see today. Each column of basalt actually consists of a series of segments about 14 inches or 360 millimeters long, which have been welded together, but which separate under stress. Now and then, exposed sections are sheared off by the waves at the fault line between segments. This has given the causeway its stepped effect. Here we have a rather moody picture of the basalt columns and sea mist over the rocks, and then the sea beyond and some clouds, sun. The Giant's Causeway is the most famous of the basalt features in this. Piece of coastline, but there are many others in the cliffs beyond the causeway and in neighboring bays. Over the years they have gained descriptive titles. The Organ is a group of towering columns embedded in the cliff face of the next bay, Port Noffer. The amphitheater is a bay surrounded by extraordinary clusters of columns. Other notable shapes include the giant's pot lid, the wishing chair, the king and his nobles, and the coffin. A giant's labor of love. Similar basalt columns can also be seen on the island of Staffa, which lies off the west coast of Scotland some 75 miles or 120 kilometers to the north, notably in Fingal's Cave. The Giant's Causeway effectively gives the impression of leading under the sea from Ireland to Staffa, and this is the origin of the legend that has given rise to its name. The giant in question is the great hero of Irish folk legend called Finn MacCool or Fionn MacCumall, the leader of the warrior band called the Fianna. Tales about Finn MacCool speak with the gusto of his huge appetite, of his dauntless bravery, and of his prodigious feats of hunting. Among the several reasons offered for Finn MacCool's construction of the Causeway is the story that it was a huge act of devotion. He hammered in pillar after pillar to create a dry walkway by which his lady love of the moment, a female giant who lived on Staffa, could visit him in Ireland without getting wet feet. Corona's treasures. When the novelist William Makepeace Thackeray visited the Giant's Causeway in 1842, he was told that a wreck from the Spanish Armada lay off the bay known as Port Nospania. He dismissed the story as a parcel of legends, but in 1967, the legend was shown to be fact when the Belgian marine archaeologist Robert Stenuet discovered a large collection of artifacts and treasures scattered across the seabed here. They proved that this was where the Armada's biggest ship, the galleass Corona, had sunk in 1588. The Armada had consisted of 131 ships, carrying 30,000 men, when it set sail from Spain in 1588 to invade England. After dramatic losses inflicted upon it by the English fleet, the Armada set sail for home, taking the perilous route round the north of Scotland. It was beset by foul weather, and only half the original fleet got back to Spain. Some 20 ships were wrecked off the coast of Ireland. The Corona had a particularly grueling journey. As she approached the Giant's Causeway, she had on board not the 550 people she was designed to carry, but 1,300, including crews from 2 wrecked ships. On October 26, 1588, the Corona struck a rock close to the Causeway and sank. There were only 5 survivors. Can you imagine those poor people who had survived at least one other shipwreck end up either becoming a survivor or passing away on another shipwreck not long after? Much of the wreck's treasure fell into the hands of Sorley Boy MacDonald, who had taken Dunluce Castle 4 miles or 6 kilometers to the west from the English 4 years earlier. Well, I guess he got lucky, huh? The rest lay on the seabed for nearly 400 years until it was brought to the surface by Stenuet's team in 1968 and 1969. By that time, nothing was left of the ship itself, but the surviving artifacts gave a fascinating insight into life on board a ship of the Spanish Armada. They can now be seen at the Ulster Museum in Belfast. And this is a painting of the Corona. This I actually saw in another book that I covered that talked about different shipwrecks and the treasures that were found with different shipwrecks. And I'm almost positive we looked at this little pendant with rubies. We'll take a look at one more. Pamukkale Springs. A white wonderland glistens on a Turkish hillside below a ruined city where Greeks and Romans once took the waters. Here, this is located in Turkey, and it looks like south of Bursa and near Denizli. Traveling through Asia Minor in 1765, the English classical scholar Richard Chandler first noticed Pamukkale as a vast white slope in the distance. Moving closer, he beheld with wonder what seemed to be an immense frozen cascade, the surface wavy as of water at once fixed, or in its headlong course suddenly petrified. Modern visitors to Western Turkey feel the same sense of wonder when they see Pamukkale's white-walled, scalloped-edged terraces rising one above another. Pools of water reflect the fluffy textured walls, and stalactites like frozen waterfalls hang round the periphery of the whole area, the slender pillars backed by masses of scarlet oleanders. So here's a photo of pools that lie along the terraces. It says the warm, mineral-rich water has been credited with therapeutic powers for centuries. Dark, pine-clad mountains rise behind, making a dramatic setting for the white formations as they glisten in the bright sunlight. The name Pamukkale means cotton castle. Some say that the name comes from the fluffy appearance of the walls and terraces, although local legend maintains that in ancient times giants dried cotton crops on the terraces. The walls, terraces, and stalactites at Pamukkale cover an area nearly 1.5 miles or 2.5 kilometers long and 1/3 of a mile or 0.5 kilometers wide. They are the work of hot volcanic springs that bubble up on a plateau above them. The springs' water is heavily laden with lime and other minerals that has been dissolved out of the rocks by rainwater as it seeps through the ground on its way to the springs. Almost anything that is immersed in the spring water acquires a coating of lime, and objects dropped into the water appear to turn to stone in a matter of days. When it runs off the edge of the plateau, the spring water deposits lime on the hillside. Over many thousands of years, layer upon layer of the lime was built up to form the walls, terraces, and stalactites of glistening white. For thousands of years, the mineral-rich hot springs have had a reputation for their healing properties. They have been said to cure or ease complaints such as rheumatism, high blood pressure, and heart disease. The spring's reputation was almost certainly known in 190 BC. It was then that Eumenes II, the king of the Greek city of Pergamum, near Turkey's west coast, is thought to have founded the city of Hierapolis on the plateau where the springs rise. He named the city after Hera, who was the wife of Pergamum's legendary founder Telephus. In 129 BC, Hierapolis became part of the Roman Empire and found favor as a watering place with a succession of emperors, including Nero or Hadrian, who came to drink or bathe in the waters. During Nero's reign in AD 60, the city was devastated by an earthquake. The new city built to replace it was larger and more magnificent than before, with wide streets, a theater, public baths, and houses supplied with warm water carried in channels. The 2nd century baths had rooms of different temperatures, which the bather used in turn. He started in the cold frigidarium, went on to the warm tepidarium, where he oiled his body, and then progressed to the hot and steamy caldarium, where he scraped the oil and dirt from his skin with a blade called a striggle. Part of the baths houses a museum with a fine collection of statues and other finds, including medical instruments and jewelry. One of the city's most interesting remains in the sanctuary of Pluto, the god of the underworld, which stands next to the temple dedicated to Apollo, the god of the sun, music, poetry, and medicine. They were placed next to each other in order to cancel out each god's light and dark powers. The dark powers of Pluto must have seemed formidable indeed, for emanating from a cave at the site were poisonous fumes that Strabo, the Greek geographer and historian, said would kill a bull instantly. Yikes. The fumes were associated with evil spirits, and it was said that the eunuch priests who guarded the entrance were the only people who could enter the cave without harm. The fumes are now known to come from a hot spring, and the chamber still gives off a vapor that brings tears to the eyes. Homes for the next life. Outside the city wall stands an extensive cemetery containing 1,200 tombs, many of them elaborately ornamented and of grand proportions. They bear witness to the many wealthy Romans who came to the city in search of a cure and failed to find it. Today's tourists are the successors to wealthy Roman holidaymakers. They come to bathe in the warm pools, one of which has broken Roman columns lying on the bottom, and to marvel at the sparkling white terraces lying on the hillside below the ruined city. So here's some amazing photos of the reflection of the lime-covered hillsides and reflections of the pools. Stunning. Well, I think that's probably good for today. I'm so glad that you were able to join me